Welcome to the Alaska Weather Show. I'm meteorologist Peter Chan, coming to you from the National Weather Service on this Tuesday, June 13th. And I have a very important change notice to pass along to you. You may have heard already. The Alaska Weather Show is going to be having its last TV broadcast on June 30th. Now, this is, in a traditional sense, going over the airwaves, as it has been doing since the late 1970s. Starting on July 1st, the National Weather Service will provide a modified web-based version of the program on a new YouTube channel. We will be moving away from the Alaska Public Media site and going to @NWS Alaska, so you can go ahead and subscribe now. We will not be posting that content until July 1st. At least you'll be ready to go. If you have any concerns or comments you wish to share, there is an open public comment period now through July 30th. You can send your comments to nws.service-change-comments@noaa.gov. And if you have any other questions, you may reach Carrie.haisley at noaa.gov and Donald.moore at noaa.gov. And we certainly thank you for your patience and understanding as we undergo this transition. And in addition to this broadcast, if you'd like additional weather information, you can always go online to weather.gov. That is the National Weather Service's online presence. It'll bring you to a map of the continental U.S. with Alaska, Hawaii to the lower left. You can also get weather information for American Samoa, Guam, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands. And as of this Tuesday afternoon, we still have air quality alerts, parts of Minnesota. We still have fires raging out of control across areas of Canada, especially in through Quebec. Severe thunderstorm watches along areas of the Oklahoma, Texas Panhandle, Arcala region there, and then down into southern Georgia, northern Florida Panhandle, with excessive heat advisories and warnings for areas of South Texas. Well, flood warnings continue along the Sag River there in the far north slope area. The Dalton Highway between milepost 401 and 407 have been impacted by the river undercutting the highway bank there and even eroding some of the pavement. The highway, though, does remain open with one lane with guided express through there. Otherwise, repairs continue, and the water levels are going to stay high in the Sag River here as we go through this week. Flood watch remains the southeastern slope of the Brooks Range, including areas around Coldfoot and Arctic Village. And also, we expect high water levels along the rivers and creeks there of the eastern half of the North Slope, as well as toward the central interior. The AKwx River will be running higher than normal, especially in the vicinity of Huslia Wednesday and Thursday from some heavier rainfall that fell through the Brooks Range the latter half of last week. High surf advisory is in effect for the Seward Coast and St. Lawrence. We'll talk more about that, and the Panhandle is going to have a very wet frontal system come into there later Thursday, especially Thursday night and continuing into Friday. Well, a couple of the FAA webcams this Tuesday afternoon. Arctic Village has a flood watch. You can see some light rain falling there, 46 degrees, lower overcast skies. Nome, high surf advisory. South-southwest winds are going to be picking up tonight, continuing through the day Wednesday until beginning to fall off on Thursday morning. And above normal surf is expected as a result of strong south-south winds associated with a front that's pushing into the west side of the state. We expect water levels to be as much as 2 to 3 feet above normal high tide. But areas in blue indicate where the high water is anticipated on the rivers and creeks of the central interior and areas of the eastern north slope. We have a flood watch here for the southern southeastern slopes of the Brooks Range, where another 1 to 1.5 inches of rain could fall through midweek, and then that flood warning on the Sag River up there along the north slope. So fire danger has been kept at bay. When we look at this compared to last year, when we have just a really crazy excessive fire season, it's been much more subdued, fortunately, because of the widespread cloud cover, generally cooler temperatures, showers. We've had a few fire starts from lightning, but at least this is a far cry from last year, especially here through the southwest interior. Very low fire danger there this year. Satellite imagery, well, we have a few things going on of importance. The next low is going to be lifting out of the North Pacific and up into the Gulf midweek, especially later Wednesday and Thursday. This is a cold front pushing across eastern Russia. This frontal system will work its way eastward, and some energy is going to dive down southeastward here and then kind of come in behind the backside of the low that's coming up out of the North Pacific, and that's going to kind of enhance and energize the low that sits out over the Gulf later this week, bringing along some moderate to heavier rainfall, especially to the panhandle here as we go into later Thursday and early Friday. So the weather map this Tuesday afternoon, just weak front troughs within the interior, a few isolated thunderstorms along the Alcan border, and here comes that shot of colder air working its way east and southeastward. By late tonight, early on Wednesday morning, that low will be approaching, coming up out of the North Pacific, still well south, though, say, of Kodiak Island. The front out to the west will continue to slowly press eastward, but strong south-southwest winds ahead of that will cause elevated surf there along the south and west side of the Seward Peninsula and St. Lawrence Island, perhaps 2 to 3 feet above normal high tide. Wednesday afternoon, the low will be starting to approach the Gulf, and this push of warmer air is going to have some moderate to locally heavy rain with it as it works up toward the panhandles. This ridge of high pressure just kind of gets squeezed out as this frontal system works its way upward, and then we're going to get some energy coming in behind the low from this system coming in out of eastern Russia and the northern half of the Bering. So by Thursday afternoon, there is the low over the Gulf. This bit of energy will continue working its way southeastward, and some of the rainfall could be rather steady, moderate to locally heavy there, especially across areas of the Gulf by Thursday night. So temperature-wise, we are looking at readings that are going to be above freezing most areas, maybe near freezing up there toward, say, Wales, Teller, those areas. And then temperatures Wednesday afternoon will generally, nobody's really looking to be in the 70s. Some 60s possible across the Yukon Flats along the Alcan border, perhaps still around 60 there at Fairbanks. But overall, statewide, rather cool conditions, might sneak out of 60 around Glen Ellen as well as Haines, Skagway, and down toward Ketchikan. Thursday morning lows will generally stay above freezing. Near freezing, though, Point Hope down toward, again, Teller, Shishmaref. And then temperatures Thursday afternoon, there could be a few isolated 70s, Fort Yukon along the Alcan border. 40s generally along the far north, upper 30s to mid-40s along the far north, and 50s to near 60, the southern areas in through the panhandle. So no real signs of any big warm-ups on the way, at least maybe until after the end of the month. The time frame here for the 6 to 10-day temperature outlook, June 19th through the 21st, centered on the solstice, has temperatures averaging a bit above normal southeast interior and panhandle. That looks like that's going to happen. Some ridging trying to build back toward the north and west. It may succeed by the end of the month, and if that happens, that could actually help warm up south central areas around Cook Inlet, Prince William Sound, and the Kenai. But for now, still below normal temperatures are expected to continue throughout the west, the Seward Peninsula, and especially the YK deltas. So not a real change from the pattern we've seen here overall for much of this late winter and spring. And precipitation-wise, we expect precipitation to average near normal across the panhandle, though a pretty good soaking will be heading that way for Thursday night and early Friday. As we go further west, much of the mainland should experience precipitation a bit above normal, and then perhaps just a tad above normal once we get up around the Seward Peninsula, Kotzebue, eastward toward Ambler. Those areas may end up a little wetter than normal here as we head through the time of the summer solstice.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Well, it's now time to look at your aviation weather for a flight plan this midweek, Wednesday or Thursday. We have a number of things going on. Low pressure will be coming up out of the North Pacific, passing south of Kodiak Island and then into the Gulf here as we go through the latter half of the week. This is going to spread more precipitation, breezy conditions to areas of the Gulf, heavier precipitation into the Panhandle, especially late in the day, Thursday and Thursday night. Meanwhile, up along the Russian Arctic coast, there's an area of low pressure. Cold front extends south from there. Some energy is going to drop southward down along the east side of the Bering Sea, and as a result, that's going to kind of come in behind that low that comes up out of the North Pacific. But Wednesday morning, we expect widespread IFR conditions, Bering Strait down through St. Lawrence, Nunavik Island, St. Matthew, St. Paul, the Aleutians in the Pacific side of the Alaska Peninsula. Wednesday afternoon, that area persists from near the Bering Strait, west side of the Seward Peninsula, Nunavik Island into the eastern Aleutians. Could be a widely scattered thunderstorm pop-up in areas of the Yukon Flats, east central interior along the Alcan border Wednesday afternoon and evening. Thursday morning, generally VFR conditions across much of the central northern mainland, and a strip of IFR conditions from near the Bering Strait southward through Nunavik Island, approaching the tip there of the Alaska Peninsula, with IFR conditions creeping up into the lower Gulf. Thursday afternoon, we anticipate IFR conditions through the lower Gulf as a frontal system with more in the way of some moderate to locally heavier rain pushes into the Panhandle by Thursday night. Could be still some widely scattered thunderstorms pop up from areas of the Yukon Flats, and especially on the south side, south slopes there of the Brooks Range. At Atuvik Pass on Wednesday, we'll see MVFR conditions become VFR. Same thing, Adigan Pass there in the Brooks Range, MVFR becoming VFR. Lake Clark and Merrill, generally MVFR conditions there, and as we go up through the Alaska Range, Rainy Pass, MVFR. Windy Pass will see MVFR conditions become VFR as we go through the afternoon, and then Isabel Pass, MVFR also becoming VFR. And Mentasta Pass should generally see VFR conditions, though MVFR conditions will prevail Wednesday further south through the Copper River and further north as you get away from the north entrance, perhaps an isolated thunderstorm. Tanita Pass, mainly MVFR conditions to hold on Wednesday. Same thing, Portage Pass and Chilkoot and White will see MVFR conditions give way to VFR as we go into the later morning and afternoon. Freezing levels at the surface are confined to the far north there along the Arctic coast, Utqiagvik, and to the lower Beaufort Sea. And we have some cooler temperatures aloft in through the northwestern Gulf, over the southwest mainland where we have freezing levels at or just a bit above 4,000 feet, not especially warm considering the time of year. And then the threat for icing, there could be some isolated moderate icing in a precipitation area on the north side of a low along areas of the Alaska Peninsula, especially south of there above 6,000 feet, areas within the southwest interior above 6,000 feet, and then further north in the colder air, there could be some isolated moderate icing above 4,000 feet through the lower Chukchi Sea, Russian coast, and areas up toward, say, Point Hope. And as far as looking at the jet stream, we do have a low circulation there, Gulf of Anadyr, eastern Russia. Strongest winds about 125 jet max there out of the north coming in across Kamchatka, and another low circulation just south of the eastern Aleutians and tip of the Alaska Peninsula, 700 millibars. We find those two low circulations, one just south of the Alaska Peninsula in the North Pacific associated with the surface low that's going to be lifting up out of that region. Low here remains over eastern Russia with south-southwest flow, 45 to as high as 55 knots there just out through the Chukchi Sea and Bering Strait. And then at 3,000 feet, we do find a belt of stronger southwesterly to south winds on the west side of the state, especially across the Seward Peninsula and up along areas that include Kivalina and Point Hope and Cape Lisburne. And it is in those locations on Wednesday the greatest threat for some considerable moderate turbulence over far northern areas of the Bering, including Norton Sound, the Seward Peninsula, Kotzebue Sound, and much of the lower middle Chukchi Sea, and up along areas of the northwest coast, including Point Tilley and Cape Lisburne. Also could be some turbulence around Kodiak Island, surface to 5,000 feet.
Hi, this is Ken Graham, Director of the National Weather Service. We are here in Anchorage talking to everybody here today. What a great day it has been, learning about how forecasting is challenging. You got terrain, you got water, you got all sorts of challenges here in Alaska when it comes to forecasting. But I discovered something I got to share with everybody right here. We have an ice desk. We have an ice desk. We're going to talk about that here. Introduce yourself and tell us what you're doing here. I mean, ice desk. Let's talk about it.
So I'm Mary Beth Schreck. I'm the Sea Ice Program Leader, and we analyze satellite imagery all day, make charts of where the ocean has frozen, where that ice is, and forecast where it's going to go.
Yeah, just to capture some of this stuff, it's absolutely amazing. Well, you're looking at ice, where it's going to go. Why? I mean, what is the impact? I mean, who's out there looking at all this?
So we've got mariners who are out who want to generally avoid the ice, other than maybe research vessels or Coast Guard, places like that. But there are also a lot of people who live along the coastal areas who are traveling along that ice. They're hunting, subsistence hunting along that ice. And so they're really interested in learning, how thick is it? How stable is it? Is that ice that's attached to the land, is it going to break off and move away while they're on it? Or is it, is the ice going to be thick enough to support them, their snow machines, snowmobiles, that kind of thing?
So, I mean, it's a lot. It could be, they're depending on it for life, but at the same time, it could be life-threatening.
Exactly.
Type of thing. That's amazing. And the real quick, show us some ice. Justin, come in here. Show us some ice on the screen.
Yeah, so this is an infrared image, so it's showing the temperature of the ice. So some of these areas are thicker ice around here, but then you see some of the darker areas, and that's where some thinner ice. So the ice actually moved away from the coast, and then it refroze in there. So that's a lot thinner.
It's amazing. So I just appreciate what you do. It's just something that the employees of the Weather Service need to see. I mean, it's just important work here, and those behind me are not going to escape this video. So you're going to come over here. You can be back here, behind here. So just both of you, introduce yourselves to the rest of the Weather Service here.
Michael Lawson, Sea Ice Meteorologist.
Kayla Tinker, Sea Ice Analyst.
So what's the most challenging thing? Each of you, what's the most challenging thing about your job?
Lack of data.
Lack of data. Okay.
That's a hard question. Yeah, I guess, some days when we don't have data.
So it's challenging. You're trying to do something really tough without the information that you need.
Yeah.
That's not easy.
Clouds. Clouds are the biggest challenge.
Blocks being able to see the ice, right? Yeah. That's a big challenge, something we don't always think about. So think about the variety of things that we do in the National Weather Service. This is just an ice desk. I just can't stop saying it. It's just amazing what y'all do. I thank you for what y'all do. And one by one, what makes you so passionate about what you do? What brings you to work every day?
The people.
The people.
Yeah, people.
Yeah, supporting the people that are living out there and interacting with the ice, and knowing that we're making a difference in their lives.
Amazing amount of work. So there you have it, folks. I just wanted to, it was just interesting to be able to learn this. Ice desk. I'm going to keep saying it all day. Ice desk. So appreciate what you all do. It's a big mission, an important mission for the National Weather Service. I want to share that with everybody. This has been Ken Graham. I'm here at the Anchorage Weather Forecast Office, and it's been an interesting day.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back, and looking at the sea ice. Ice continues to really melt off here across the Chukchi Sea. We still have along areas of the coastline some shorefast ice, and there is still some ice, pack ice shrinking in coverage there northeast of St. Lawrence Island there between that and the Seward Peninsula. And one little pocket left in the vicinity of St. Matthew, but by and large, as we would expect now as we're approaching the summer solstice, that the ice, though, will continue to melt off, though it's been a very, very cool spring there along the west and southwestern coast. Areas of the Panhandle on Wednesday, winds will be kind of a mixed bag, northeast, or I should say west to northwest, 10 to 15 knots. Petersburg down through Ketchikan, Lynn Canal, south winds 15 knots, waves 2-3 feet. Outer coast winds west to northwest, 10 to 15 knots, more variable up toward Yakutat, but waves generally 5 feet. But we're going to have a stronger frontal boundary ahead of low pressure down through the lower Gulf on Thursday, with more in the way of rain pushing into the Panhandle, especially late in the day for Thursday evening, Thursday night into Wednesday morning. Southeast winds picking up 15 to as high as 30 knots there. Dixon entrance, waves as high as 8 feet, 3 feet Lynn Canal. Outer coast winds 25, 30 knots, but some gusts up around gale force, especially from north of Sitka and perhaps out over the north central Gulf as we go into Thursday as well. Initially Wednesday, fairly quiet conditions here in the northwest corner of the Gulf. 10-knot winds variable within Prince William Sound, waves a couple of feet. Look for east-southeast winds 20 knots there at the entrance of Cook Inlet, and then southwest to south winds 10 knots mid and upper Cook Inlet. But by Thursday, with low pressure to the south, we have pretty strong easterly flow, east-northeast flow to 30 knots out in the open waters here of the northwestern Gulf. 15-knot northeasterly winds in Prince William Sound, 3-foot waves, and north winds 15 to 20 knots through Cook Inlet with waves of 4 to 6 feet. Across the Alaska Peninsula and Kodiak Island, generally variable winds 10 to maybe as high as 15 knots. Wednesday, waves 2-3 feet on the North Pacific side and 1 to 2 feet on the Bering side. Winds will try to turn back more toward the west-southwest across most of the peninsula Thursday, 15, 20 knots. North to northeast winds, though, stronger winds there on the east side of Kodiak Island, Shelikof Strait, with waves maybe as high as 7 feet there. The Aleutian chain will see winds that are variable. The eastern Aleutians 10 knots, waves 1 to 3 feet. Look for winds southwest to west 15 to 20 knots as you get out toward the central western Aleutians on Wednesday. And then for Thursday, generally west to southwest winds 15 to 20 knots along the length of the chain, with waves 6 to 7 feet in the North Pacific and 4 to as high as 6 feet on the Bering side. Along the southwest coast, especially the Yukon Delta on up into Norton Sound, south winds increasing to 30 knots along that frontal system with higher gusts. We expect southwest winds to 25 knots, St. Matthew down through St. Paul and St. George with waves 6 to 8 feet. And on Thursday, those winds do come down, especially along the Yukon Delta and into Norton Sound, turning more back toward the east-southeast 10 to 15 knots. And still southwesterly winds, but only 15 knots around St. Matthew and St. Paul. And then finally, along the Arctic coast, kind of a mixed bag of winds of 10 to 15 knots, westerly in Kaktovik, easterly Prudhoe Bay, southerly Utqiagvik. Strongest winds will be along that frontal system through the Chukchi Sea and Bering Strait, 30 to 35 knots with some higher gusts. And then for Thursday, winds will be more of an east-northeast along portions of the Arctic coast around 10 knots, and generally easterly winds through the lower Chukchi Sea from Point Lay down through Point Hope and on the north side of the Seward Peninsula. But once we pass on through the Gulf, or down through the Bering Strait, we expect winds to be east out of Norton Sound and southeasterly along the west coast, though northerly 15 knots there in the vicinity of Gamble on the north side of St. Lawrence Island. So looking quickly at the weather map here for Wednesday afternoon, here comes that low approaching the Gulf from the southwest. This frontal system will occlude and provide stronger winds on Thursday. Here comes that cold front out through from eastern Russia into the west side of the state with reinforcing a shot of cold air and energy that'll be dropping southeastward to off of the YK Delta on Thursday, with a low strengthening with quite a bit of rain moving into the Panhandle by Thursday night.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.